Hello everyone, my name is Code Gorilla, and today I'm going to be running Anodyne 2 Return to Dust. This is the all cards good ending category. Anodyne 2 Return to Dust is a 2019 indie game from Analgesic Productions. It is the sequel to their game Anodyne, as you no doubt guessed by the name, although I use the term sequel very loosely. There's very little narratively connecting the two games. The devs even say as much in the first 30 seconds of this game in a message to the player that plays at the very beginning. The purpose of this run is practice for an upcoming marathon run. I'm going to be performing this run at Indie-thon Fall Follies 2022. I'm also using this as potentially a submission video for various other marathons that are happening that have open submissions right now. Before we get started, we're going to go through the settings. We want to make sure show text immediately is on, camera distance and speed are maxed out, double health and invincibility are off, we want saving on, we want skip dialogue on, I want flip buttons off, and finally we're going to put this into simplified Chinese, because that has the least amount of text throughout the game, which makes it therefore the fastest. One last disclaimer before we actually get started. There is a glitch used in several spots throughout this run called pause gliding, where you rapidly pause and unpause the game in order to extend the horizontal distance of a glide. If you are sensitive to rapidly cycling screens, consider this a photosensitivity warning for exactly that. I'll try to warn you as the individual pause glides are coming up throughout the run, but consider this your blanket warning there. So with that preamble out of the way, we are going to go ahead and get started in 3, 2, 1, go. Right off the bat here, we have a cutscene. This is the cutscene I mentioned where the devs say, hey, there's not a whole lot connecting this to Anodyne. You can play them in either order. And then we introduce some of our characters. We're actually going to skip the second half of this cutscene by jumping out of the cutscene trigger as soon as we have control of our character, just like this. And with that, we are on to our tutorial. The tutorial gives you a feel for the core gameplay loop of this game. You explore the 3D world to find 2D worlds. You explore the 2D world to find collectibles, normally cards and dust. And you turn in those collectibles to unlock additional parts of the 3D world, rinse and repeat. What we're actually collecting during the tutorial are referred to as the elements of nurturing. This is the element of a bowl of cereal. I sometimes refer to them as the elements of a balanced breakfast, because that is essentially what they are. Coming up here, we're going to do our first glitch of the game, a pause float. It looks something like that. Essentially, the way that works is if you're playing specifically the Switch version, because this glitch is exclusive to the Switch version, if you jump and then immediately pause the game, you will maintain your momentum for as long as you leave the game paused, which means you can gain arbitrary amounts of height. As you can imagine, that's quite useful, and we use it in a variety of different places throughout the run. Here is another example. We're going to use it to get over this mountain here, just like this. 1, 2, 3. Now, depending on how high you have to go, every pause float lasts for a different amount of time, so you'll have to memorize those timings. The good news is there is a timer on the pause screen that allows you to easily count out those timings as you're doing all of that. This is the third and final part of the tutorial. We picked up the element of a bottle of milk. Here we're going to get the element of a well-regulated temperature because you don't want your breakfast to be too hot or too cold. There we go. And that pretty much finishes the tutorial. Coming up after this is what would normally follow is a tutorial boss, but the way they try to force you to fight that tutorial boss is to lock you in with invisible walls. However, they forget to give you an invisible ceiling, so we're just going to pause float right up and over those invisible walls and get on with the rest of the game. While I'm doing that, I'm also going to be setting up for the next trick we're going to use, which is known as a save float. It works the exact same way as a pause float, except that it uses the pause game or the save game dialog instead of the pause menu. However, that means we need to turn off automatic text advance in order to keep that dialogue on screen. The benefit to doing a save float over a pause float is you get to see where you're going and know exactly how high you are in the air. However, obviously the downsides are A, you have to have a save point, and B, you have to turn off the text advance option. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just like that, we are up and out of there. And now we're going to double back because over this way is actually the elevator. We need to get out of here. Got around the invisible walls. And we're up to the city. Now we do have to match through this little text cutscene here. Unfortunately, because we did turn off text skip. But now we can do this. And this is our save float. And you just soar right into the air. Now at the top of this, we're going to be doing our first pause glide. Like I said, we're going to rapidly pause and unpause the game to extend our horizontal distance in the air by a significant amount. That's going to look a little something like this. And our target is that platform out in the distance there. This is a debug platform that has a bunch of different debug cutscene triggers on it. We're going to drive through them in a specific way to actually drive through 2 of those cutscene triggers and have both cutscenes play at the same time. So we're reinforcing the prism and clearing the storm above the city at the same time. I'll get into what that actually means in terms of the gameplay, because it doesn't affect things hugely until a little while later. But suffice to say, those are both necessary steps to beat the game. Here we have our first 2D section of the game, or we're getting to our first 2D section of the game. This is Mysterio Weisel. We have to get her to get up out of bed and then talk to her a bunch of times before we can actually spark a connection and shrink down inside of her. That's what you're doing in this game, is you're actually shrinking down inside of these other creatures and cleaning the dust out of their insides. Most of the 2D sections are preceded by a little rhythm minigame like this one. I tend not to say much during them because I will mess up if I try to talk and do them at the same time. They're essentially little auto-scrollers. As long as you don't miss any of your inputs, there's nothing you can do to speed it up. But thankfully, they don't take very long. So this is Mysterio Weisel. This is our first main 2D area of the game. All the different 2D areas have different themings and gameplay gimmicks to them. This one gameplay gimmick, it introduces these little shooters, which you can use to hit switches, just like that. But mostly they're just there to, shoot things. And several of them are on tracks that will follow you from side to side. The main gameplay gimmick of this section are innocent slimes. They look like this, and if they die for any reason, a gate will pop up to block your pathway. And when I say any reason, they are incredibly fragile and will die to anything, including you just walking into them. So they're kind of placed to be landmines in certain places. That said, as long as you know what you're doing, it's not terribly difficult to get past them, like you might expect for, you know, the first real gameplay of the game. We've picked up 2 keys that we're going to stick into these locks here. At the end of this is a boss that we are actually going to skip. The way the boss skips in this game work, when you enter the boss arena, the gates don't immediately close behind you. You have to fully step into the room. However, if you manage to put the boss in hit stun before you do that, the boss's dialogue will never trigger, the gates will never pop up, and you can just walk right out of the room, just like that. And with that, we are done with Mysterio Weisel. We have our first card of the game. There are 24 plus 1 bonus cards in the game. And given that this is all cards, we are in fact getting all 24 plus 1. Now, the reason I say 24 plus 1 is there are 24 cards that count on the count for the main menu, but there is a 25th bonus card that is required by the rules of the category. And it's also just required for the good ending, so we would be getting it either way. 1, 2, 3. So here we've got Brand Malignant. This is our next 2D section. We've got another little rhythm minigame here. Every single one of these games is the exact same. There's no randomness in these. They're always the same pattern for the same character. So yeah, here we are at Brand Malignant. The theme of Brand Malignant is fire. There are fire slimes, there are fire shooters, there's fire that pops out of the ground, there's stationary fire that you've got to put out. In terms of the speedrun, the theme is also quick and accurate movements to make early cycles. So there's a couple of these rooms where you're waiting on these fire shooters to burn down gates. And there's some precise movements you have to make to get quick cycles, like here. Get that on the first shot. Here you gotta light all 3 of these slimes on fire. We shoot the last slime into the shooter's face in order to speed it up just ever so slightly. Because all the gate cares about is that there is a moment where there are 3 flame slimes on the screen. It doesn't matter if one of those flame slimes immediately dies. There's the water slimes I mentioned. Here it's faster just to tank the fire. Here's another relatively quick 2 cycle. We're going to get our second key here. And then we've got another boss fight at the end of the section. It is theoretically possible to skip this boss in a similar way to how we skipped the previous boss. However, actually being able to do so is, I think, sub-pixel perfect. And is not that much faster compared to a well-executed boss fight like this. That's a very clean boss fight. Just get in, get out. That said, the other benefit to skipping bosses is there's several of this exact same boss, and every time you fight them, it takes more hits to beat the boss. However, what that means is if you skip some of the bosses, later versions of that boss take fewer hits and therefore go faster. Alright, we're going to do another very big pause float here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. And then a pause glide here to get over the caldera. The rocks on top of the caldera are fake, as you can see, but we're going all the way over here. And we're now driving through a different set of cutscene triggers to stack two more things. This time we're stacking turning in the dust we have in our tank and reinforcing the prism a second time. And I turned off text skip because if you have automatic text skip on there, the text advances too quickly and you actually exit the first cutscene before the second cutscene has fully finished. And as a result, you don't get credit for both of them. So by turning off text skip, I get to control when that advances, so I wait for the full camera pan back before advancing the text. And now I've turned text skip back on, and we're actually going to leave it on for the rest of the run. This is Gustine Papellum. He's made of tongues. It's a little bit horrifying. So, Gustine Papellum. The theme here is also, as you might have guessed, tongues. We've got these levers here that look like tongues and uvulas. Thankfully, these are a lot more cartoony than the textures on the character on the outside in 3D, because otherwise this place would be completely horrifying. That said, there's not much to this section in terms of the speedrun, not much to talk about. There is one spot that has some fairly precise movement to get a quick kill, but I'll call that out when it comes up. But otherwise, it's just kind of going through here in the intended way, but quickly. Here to get this key and then take the shortcut back. We go ahead and turn in this key. So the next room is the one that has that quick kill that I mentioned. Just gotta make sure you put yourself in that corner before you enter the screen, and then go right and up and hold the vacuum cleaner out the entire time. And then we've got a boss here. This boss is completely impossible to skip, as far as anyone knows. Because of this tongue wall that's in the middle of the arena. I fired that last shot off a little bit early. It's fine, we had plenty of ammunition. If you use up all the blocks that are actually in the arena to start with, you have to wait for the boss to make a move, at which point it'll spit out a block if there aren't any on the screen. Which is obviously a lot slower, but they give you more than enough ammunition to defeat any of the bosses without having to rely on that. So coming up here, we've got our other main glitch that we use, known as ride scale clipping. Ride scale is the name of your car form, because you're in, normal scale, ride scale, nano scale. Later on, you get pico scale. It's just different sizes you can be. And the way it works is like this. You spin the camera, you turn into a car after wedging yourself in a corner, and you clip right through the wall. It basically works because the car hitbox is larger than your normal hitbox. And there's also some interesting things about directionality. When you turn into a car, you are facing in the same direction the camera is facing, even if you weren't before. So that spinning the camera portion of it is also relevant to making that glitch work. So this is Great Guam. There's not really a whole lot going on here in terms of gameplay gimmicks. It introduces a new enemy type called mini Guams. They're represented by little moving earth because they're buried. They're burrowed into the ground. You have to walk over them to get them to pop out and look around, at which point you can interact with them like they are just normal enemies. So walk over them, then you can vacuum them up and shoot them out just like normal. As it's common for the 2D sections in this game, we have essentially a fork right at the beginning where we have to do one side and then we have to do the other side. And only once you've done both sides can you proceed to the end. So this is now the top half. The dark rooms here are exact copies of the light rooms, except with the red ropes that are blocking your path removed. So it's essentially just a memory test. Do you remember how the room was laid out? Sometimes they add extra sprites like that. Thankfully, none of the rooms are so complex that it's actually particularly difficult to remember. And then here we're going to interrupt the Guam family dinner. And then we've got another boss here that we're going to skip, much in the way we did with Mysterio Weisel's boss. We have to wait for that mini Guam to come to us to be able to reach any of the ammunition. But just like that, we are done. So with that, that is the last of the Center City C-Note cards. And normally what you do at this point is you turn in the 4 cards and you fill the prism up with 100 dust, and you use all of those resources to clear the storm that's hovering over the city so that you can actually go all the way up the elevator and leave. We've already cleared the storm, so we don't need to do that. So we're just gonna go to the elevator. We've got a pause glide here to get to the center quickly. And then we just climb up the elevator. Now we don't want our tank to overflow, so we're going to go ahead and turn in dust here. We don't have to actually worry about specific amounts of dust until later on in the game. We will have more than enough because we skipped that 100 dust requirement from earlier. I'm going the wrong way. Cutscene. Sorry, most of the times you leave this center area, you're going through the other door, but the very first time, you want to go this way. So this is now a section of the game called Blue Veil. There are 3 2D sections to find, but there are also other cards we need that are hiding in chests in 3D. 1, 2. One such card is right here. In this building. Overshot it just a little bit. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do a really big pause glide here, so. Just like that. So what that did is it actually skipped one of those rhythm mini games. Normally you talk to an NPC that's lying in the bottom of that pit, and then spark a connection like you normally do, and do a rhythm minigame and all that, and you get to here. Instead, we're using an alternate entrance to this area that is normally reserved for your second pass going through here, but we're going to use it to get in for the first time and for the second time. You'll kind of see how that plays out in just a minute. For now, we need to clean and read all of these gravestones. We're also going to make a quick detour here to pick up this card, or this key, which we're going to use to get a card later. Now, the place where we would normally turn in the key to get that card is further down this climb than we were. But that's okay, because, like I said, we're going to have to make a second pass. So we're just going to get it on our second pass. We're going to do another pause float. This is the same structure we were on. And this is the same spot we entered, but with a worse camera. Which, to be fair, the devs did not expect us to be able to just kind of float into the air freely. And doing so kind of breaks the camera. So on our second pass here, you can see that, hey, this area is kind of alive now. Our goal here is to now talk to all of the people that used to be gravestones. But our other goal, our secondary goal, is to come over here and get this card that's in a chest in this room. Just like that. Obviously, we need the card because this is the all cards category. But even if we were playing any percent, we would actually need all the cards we can get at this point in the game. For any percent, you need all of the first 12 cards in the game. And then it's the second half of the game where you can basically skip every card. So the any percent route and the all cards route are actually exactly the same until about 50 minutes into the run. Anyways, that's Jeff Agrosite. This pit that we're about to spawn in is where you're supposed to have entered that 2D section for the first time that we skipped over. I'm going to do another pause float here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just to get out of that pit more quickly. Take those trampolines to get over to the freeway here, which is just a convenient way to get around Blue Veil in car form, which car form is faster than any other mode of travel, so we got another pause float here. We're going over to this waterfall. We're going to do a pause glide. And another pause float. 2, 3, and another pause glide. Got a lot of pause gliding in this part of the run. We're going to do another one to get over a tree root here. And we're going to drive into this lake, shoot this thing, and go down this drain pipe. Like I said, the car is the fastest way to get around. So anytime I'm not in a car, like right now, just assume that I can't be in a car, which is correct. Your car form is disabled here. One last pause glide. And we are on to Iwasaki Antimon. We do have another rhythm minigame here. They actually introduced a new wrinkle here to these rhythm minigames, which are gray crystals. For those, you just have to neutral the D-pad to block the hit. So the theme to Iwasaki Antimon's area is snow and ice. As you can see, we have both snow slimes and snowmen. The snowmen being actually the most threatening enemies in the game. You will see why in a minute. Okay. We also have these rotating ice spikes. Oh. I hit a stray bit of collision there with my projectile. So yeah, you can already see what happens with the snow slimes. They explode into piles of snowballs when they die. And coming up here, you're going to see the snowmen. They make that noise, and they pop out of the ground, and they chase you down, and they explode when they either touch you or you shoot them. And if they touch you, they do 2 points of damage, which is unlike everything else in the game, which does only 1 point of damage. I think the only other thing in the game that does 2 points of damage is one of the final boss's attacks. So that's what makes them the most threatening things in the game. Now, thankfully, this game is very generous in terms of its health. Every time you walk over a save point, you get a save, assuming you have that option on, and you get a free full heal. And this is one of the spots in the game where that can kind of matter. It's very easy to just accidentally take a lot of damage. Like so. But we're good. We have 1 health. We got 2 health. 2 health is all we need. There's only one thing that can damage us between now and then, and it only does 1 point of damage, so we are good. But yeah, like I said, this is one of the spots in the game where health can get kind of dicey. But that enemy was the last enemy that we're going to see before we get to the end of the section. We do have to make a brief detour outside where if you wanted to read some lore, you could find out some more information about Iwasaki and the person he idolizes. But we're a speedrun. We don't have time for lore. We're just gonna get on with things. Alright. We've got one more 2D section to go in the Blue Veil portion of the game. There's 1 card we need to pick up in 3D along the way, and then 1 card at the end of that 2D section, at which point we will have 12 cards, which is what we need to progress the story. We need 12 cards, and we need a total of 200 dust combined between our tank and the prism. We've already got more than enough dust, so we just really need the cards. 1, 2. Here's the card. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got another pause glide here. Bounce off the top of that mountain. Drop out of car form, and this is already where we need to be. This is Klonway Jonstein. We've got Lonway Jonstein and his quote-unquote brother, Klonway, which is the robot head we are currently entering. Klonway Jonstein here is, in my opinion, the most difficult of the 2D sections in Blue Veil to speedrun. And it's just because of the gameplay mechanic here is kind of punishing. And it's very easy to have to reset a room. So we have this shadow clone of ourselves. and it moves in a mirror to how we move. And you can see there it touched this red jelly and it immediately died, and we had to reset the room. And it's just very easily to do that and lose a bunch of time resetting rooms. Which is what makes it so difficult. But yeah, so you have the shadow clone, you have the red goo. If the shadow clone touches a spike enemy, it'll turn it into a shadow spike, which will just hunt you down. Both the clone and the shadow spikes can touch shadow buttons and will die in the red goo. So you sometimes have to manipulate the spikes in certain ways to make sure they don't get destroyed. We also have these teleporters. And yeah, it's basically just, here's a bunch of different ways of using this shadow clone. With some very precise movement. This is a room where it's very easy to just be on autopilot from the first room and just charge into the room. And if you do that, you immediately dunk your shadow clone into the red goop, which you do not want. Some of these rooms, the shadow clone would get in your way if you just tried to walk to the exit. So there we had to intentionally dunk our shadow clone into the red goop. That is test chamber 2. This section they're separated into test chambers for some reason. It's got a sort of Portal-esque feel to it. Here we have to hit that upper switch first because our clone's going to get dunked when we go to do the bottom one. Here we have to be careful not to touch the spikes with our shadow clone, because once a spike becomes a shadow spike, there is no way to destroy it, and we have to destroy all the spikes to get out of that room. All right. Got a bad part of the cycle there, so we had to wait a little bit, but it happens. And just like that, we are almost done. We've got one more room where we need to intentionally dunk our friend here. Also, Clonway here says trans rights. And there we go. That is Clonway Jonstein done. And that is Blue Veil done as a whole. What comes next is a section where our character is going to undergo some trauma. And what that means practically from a gameplay point of view is we're going to be kind of staggering and slowed down for a little bit. So we're gonna watch a cutscene in a moment, and at the end of that cutscene, we're gonna fall over and hit the ground, and then we're gonna slowly get up. We're gonna We're gonna take 8 steps where we can't transform into a car, and we walk very slowly, and then we're gonna move like normal. However, once we're moving like normal, there's an invisible timer going on, and at the end of that timer, we're going to automatically drop out of car form and fall over again and do that slow get up animation, slow 8 steps, then transform into a car again. Obviously, we don't want that. So the catch is, if we can get off the screen and through a loading zone before our timer runs out, we reset the timer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have to make some relatively precise movements through here. In particular, in the second room here, it's very tight. You have to be very careful with your movements and kind of really hug these corners. And you'll just barely make it. Yeah, just barely make it. I'm going to pause spam here to get over this railing without dropping out of car form. Because the collision is a little weird when you rapidly pause and unpause. And now we're forced to drop out of car form here to get through this cutscene. We're going to fall over again. 8 slow steps. 7, 8. Oh, I miscounted my steps. That gray puff of smoke is what happens if you try to turn into a car before you're actually allowed to. Here I have to drop out to go through this door, which means we're going to fall over again here. Touch that. That inverts this tower, and we're going to fall up the tower. These red floating jellyfish things will bounce you back up in the air if you land on them, so we're just trying to avoid them to get through this as quickly as possible. And then at the top here, we're going to be moving slowly, and if you just try to go for the doorway, you will fall over before you get to it, so you jump right before the doorway to make it through without falling over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do that to more easily get up here. And we're trying to enter this fruit, but this dog is going to come along and jump at the tree and eat the fruit. So instead, we're going to spark a connection with this dog. Now, it's a little hard to do because it jumps all over the place, but it always jumps at the same spots in the same order every time. So you kind of just get a feel for where it's going to go. So let's talk about one other sort of glitch, unintended mechanic here. Something called cutscene spawn displacement. Basically, when loading in between cutscenes, there's a brief period of time where the screen is... your character is loaded, but the screen hasn't fully loaded yet, and you haven't been locked into place yet. So if you are holding directions on the D-pad while that happens, you'll start moving and get a head start on your movement, which is exactly what I'm doing here. I should have started next to the bed there, but I got a head start because I was holding down and right during the transition between those two cutscenes. We're going to use it a couple more times throughout this part of the game. This is Dustbound Village. Our character has, after everything that they've gone through, has ended up here in Dustbound Village and doesn't really want to or know how to leave. This part of the game is our character starting a new life, essentially, and developing a new routine. From a gameplay point of view, what that means is there's actually 3 different types of segments that we're going to be doing, and we're going to be doing each one of them multiple times in sort of our character's new routine. Our 3 gameplay segments, we have gardening, we have ritual, and we have wrestling. But first we have to finish this sort of grand tour of the area. This is our last stop. This is the shrine. I'm going to hold down and right again to do another cutscene spawn displacement. It's particularly important here because when you go into this next cutscene, you're actually considerably slowed down. So that head start is even more important. So first up, we have our gardening segments. The gardening segments are the most like the gameplay segments you've already seen, the 2D play that we're already used to, where it's just, move around, go through a series of rooms, and deal with all the enemies. It's called gardening because these are weed monsters, question mark, that are damaging the gardens, and it's our job to make sure that the crops are safe. By violent force, if necessary. Our second sort of gameplay segment in Dustbound Village are ritual segments. For each one of these, we're going to walk down here to the train station and take the train. The train is going to take us over to the shrine. And then there's 3 things you do at the shrine. You roll the dice. You cross the rickety bridge. Oh. And that's what happens if you don't cross the rickety bridge. And then you send a sacrifice down the slide. Those segments are all basically going to be exactly the same. The only difference is what you send down the slide and what you roll in the dice. And then finally we have the wrestling sections, which are these sort of faux combat sections. You can see I was kind of shooting near my target. The idea is you hold down the shoot button until the projectile is near the target, and then you let go and it pretends to hit, because this is, you know, staged combat. We've got a quick time event. Kind of watching the meter on the left side here, because the last hit is always Y, so you can kind of start mashing that one early. And then for the finale for this one, you fire a shot, get it bounced back at you, and pretend to get knocked out by it. And that was the first wrestling section. So now we're going to do gardening 2. Again, there's not a whole lot to say about this part. This is the gameplay we're sort of used to. This is also the last gardening section. There's only 2 of them. From here, we're going to go into the second ritual section. So, like I said before, we're going to walk down to the train station. We take the train over to the shrine. We roll the dice. We cross the rickety bridge. Cross the rickety bridge. And we send a sacrifice down the slide. Now we've got our second wrestling section. We do a little back and forth here, where we trade blows for a little bit. Then we go to our quick time event again. Down, 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 B. These are random, so I'm just reacting to what happens on the screen. Sometimes badly, as the case may be. Now we're going to do another little bit of back and forth. And then for the finale, I stun my opponent and shoot him out of the ring. Now we got some cutscenes here before we get on to our next section. If this looks a little weird to you, it's because I did another cutscene spawn displacement. This one doesn't actually matter, but you can reposition your character to a bunch of different places. It has no effect on the gameplay. It just looks a little funny. This one, however, matters a little bit. You get a slight head start by holding left here, because once this cutscene ends, we're going to do Ritual 3, which means, once again, we need to walk to the train station. At this point, I don't have a whole lot more to say about this. It's pretty much the same as the other 2 times we've done the ritual. Roll the dice, cross the rickety bridge, and send a sacrifice down the slide. But apparently I can't do the rickety bridge section anymore. Anyways, down the slide. And finally, we've got Wrestling 3. We start again with some back and forth. Oh. Then we do a quick time event. Down, left, down, 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 left, B, up, Y. And then this is what I like to call the DDD section. Let's see if I can get it done quickly. There we go. 2 cycles is exactly what you want there. And then this would be energy tennis, but you can kind of just stand next to the opponent and spam the reflect button. At which point we have the longest cutscene in the game. This is like, I think it's like almost 2.5 minutes. Maybe it's 2 minutes, 15 seconds. I don't know, thereabouts. It's a good spot to get up and stretch. If you're really desperate, you can run to the kitchen and get yourself a drink. Not quite a long enough cutscene to, take a restroom break or anything like that, but, Of course, I make things slightly harder on myself because I split in the middle of this cutscene when I'm running with splits like I am here. I'm listening for an audio cue here to know exactly when I split. It's the sound effect that plays when you go from 2D to 3D. There it is. Now there's still more cutscene. Now this is actually where any percent and all cards diverge. If you were doing any percent, this is where you would go and start grinding some dust, because you need 150 dust by the end of the game. And any percent does so little in the back half of the game that you kind of have to grind it because you're not going to get it naturally. All cards does enough miscellaneous stuff that we are going to get that dust naturally and not really need to worry about grinding it at any point. So we just start collecting cards because we've got 12 more cards that we need to collect. Which means what we are on our way to do now is we are on our way to meet the dolphin. And we just gotta... There's a little bit of setup we gotta do along the way. We're gonna drive out this way. We can now get to the outermost section of the 3D world, known as Outer Sands. This is, I believe, Outer Sands South? I forget how directions work. I forget which direction we've actually gone here. No, this is Outer Sands North. My bad. Point is, there's 4 different Outer Sands places. We gotta talk to some trees. That's just setting up for a thing later. But over here is the dolphin. And you might wonder, hey, why is this wall texture so weird? And why is this dolphin clipping into the ground? And why is the music down tempo? And why is this rhythm minigame so hard? And why does it keep going? And where is the road? And none of this is going to be explained. Just roll with it. If you're curious, I did not do any inputs there. That just happens on its own. You can do directional inputs and block some of those dust crystals, it does not affect at all at which the speed at which you move. Welcome to No Such Scene. Yeah. That jingle, by the way, means we just got a piece of the color. There is something called the tri-lock color. To assemble it, you need the color base and 3 locks of the collar. That was one of the ones we just got. More on that later. In the meantime, let's play something completely different. This is Nora. Welcome to her boring life. I phrased it that way because that is the name of the track on the soundtrack that is actually currently playing right now. Left. So there's a specific route you can take through here to get through here as quickly as possible, which is what I'm doing. Left, up, right, up, right, up. It's up. This is last right. This is up. And there we go. We are out. Nora, our character here, goes to her day job, comes back to the apartment, goes back to her apartment, checks social media, and then goes to bed. Relatable. The next day, it turns out there was a storm overnight. You go look out the window to see the damage and realize, hey, the gargoyle that was on the corner of our building is missing now. That's weird. Oh, that gargoyle is in front of my apartment. That's weird. Anyways, we're going to check social media and we're going to go to bed again. There's actually interesting things on social media tonight, so it takes us a little bit longer. And then we go to bed. And now what would normally follow here is an honest-to-God horror segment in this game. That said, the devs were very understanding in that this is not anything like anything the rest of the game has to offer. And basically is like, hey, listen, this might be upsetting to some people. This might be too stressful for some people. That's fine. Here's an option to just skip it by taking the fire escape. Turns out it's also way faster, surprising no one, which means we as speedrunners also take that option. And just like that, we are done with Desert NPC, Beating the Dolphin, No Such Scene. It has a lot of different names, depending on who you ask. We just gotta talk to a couple more trees here. There are 5 trees in this section of the world. You have to talk to all 5 of them in a specific order in order to actually be able to spark a connection and enter the 5th tree. And that is exactly what we're doing. We're making a quick detour over here because there is a card hidden in a chest in these rocks. And over here is the 5th tree. We have, of course, another rhythm minigame. We are on our way to a section of the game called New the Land. The Land, T-H-E-L-E-A-N, or T-H-E-L-A-N-D, was the name of the world from the first game, and this part of the game is actually going to look very familiar to you if you've played Anodyne 1. If you want to understand what the connection is between the two games, so do I. If you figure it out, let me know. Because I've played this game back to front, and I got nothing. But what we have here is New Land, and we've picked up a new ability here, which is the Nano Spark, which allows us to spark connections to things even when we're in nanoscale to enter that low resolution form called picoscale that we're going to use in a bunch of different places. New Land is a little bit unusual compared to the 2D sections we're used to at this point, in that it is a much more open world than the stuff that we're used to. It's not linear at all. That said, there is a specific order we're going to be going through this. There's these pink blocks, and there's 7 of them, and you have to talk to them in a specific order. And that order is basically going to dictate our movement through this entire section. So there's 1 and 2. And then we're going to go up here, take this side path over here, because it loops around to the other side of a gate that we need to open. So all the way around here. Raft movement is a little weird. The 2 ways you can move the raft is by A, using your vacuum cleaner, or B, by walking to the edge. You can see I'm kind of doing both to go as fast as I can in a given direction. But it means diagonals aren't really a thing you can do. Okay. There's some oscillation there where I didn't quite clear the path optimally. But it's fine. We've got a picoscale section here that is going to have a card at the end of it. We mostly just have to deal with the pink crystals in each of these rooms. Although sometimes it's just dodge, like here. Wait a little bit. And there we go. That was worth a card. And then we just backtrack back out here. Get back to the raft. There's going to be a lot of go do a thing. Okay, now backtrack to where you left the raft. Because that's our main way to get around here. Here is block number 3. Here we found Waldo. And here is the Mega Slime, Lord of all the slimes. So we're going to enter it and defeat its inner child in order to shrink it back to a reasonable size. I don't know. I don't remember the justification for that one. If I'm perfectly honest. So the thing we're trying to do for the end game of this section is we need 4 pieces of armor. We just got the chest piece there. There's also a sword, some boots, and a shield that we need to collect. The blocks that we're messing with are what get us the boots. We're heading over here to get the shield, as well as blocks number 4 and 5. The other thing is momentum is a big part of how you move on that raft, because it does not turn or change directions very easily. So that was block number 4. We're going to do a little shooting gallery here to get to block number 5. And I waited a little bit there because the gas cloud that these slimes give off can destroy your projectile and save them, which you want to avoid. Now we're going to go up here, climb the mountain, and at the end of this mountain path, there's a little trading minigame sequence. So we go Bottle, Cow, Hat Kid, Squinty, Ghost, King, Purple Hair, Baldy, Knight, Shield Maiden, Shield. There we go. And now we can leave this section. We have to get out through here. This is the only way in and out of that part of the map. And then we're going to go over here. Got to go back to the castle, because we need to cross this moat here. That's the only spot you can do it. And this is block number 6. We head down here. And that's block number 7. Now, you could follow the path there and get the hint that tells you that's where the boots are hidden. But I just know that that's where they're hidden, so we skip all that. Now here, I need to go considerably more down. Yeah, I need to duck underneath this island until I get to here, at which point I can turn south. And this is a door maze. The trick is you always want to enter the door that has a dark tile in front of it. That's how I don't, strictly speaking, have the path memorized, but it's easy enough to tell. Okay. And that gets us our sword, so we now have the 4 armor pieces that we need. We're going to use that warp pad to actually warp back to the castle so that we can go turn in the 4 armor pieces. I'm going to put them on these 4 pedestals and then talk to the court wizard there. There's that bug with the staff. And doing all of that allows us to revive the prince who had been petrified there in the castle. And with that out of the way, we can take the warp pad back to where we left off, because it happens to also be conveniently close to the end of this section, which is why we route it in that particular way. We gotta go down here, do some tight raft maneuvering. And up here. And this is Dustra, the Dust Dragon. First, to actually weaken up the dragon, we have to make it dizzy by just spinning in circles around it. Once we've done that, we can actually spark and enter the dragon. And we have our first boss fight in a long time. So that red line will stop you from accessing any of the things down there. I did not want the shield. You need the swords to do damage. You need the shields to block attacks. You can also block the big wave by just climbing to the top of the screen. It's not really a big deal. The items always come out in the same pattern every time, so it's fairly easy to make this consistent. Although sometimes you miss shots like that, but it's fine. We got our last hit in, and that is Dustra down. Now the prince is going to come in and kill steal, but we're still going to get the dust dragon's body as a dust crystal, which will put more dust in our tank, which is good. And that'll also get us the last card from New Zealand. Before we head on to the next section, we now have a full tank of dust. And like I mentioned, we do need 150 dust by the end of the game. We have collected 90 of it. Our tank is full. We cannot collect any more. So we're going to go empty our tank and store it in the prism so that we can actually get the last 60 dust that we need. While I'm at it, let's talk about the other thing we need for the end of the game. We need that collar that I mentioned earlier. There's a collar base, which is just hanging out in a chest in a 3D area. We'll pick it up later. But then there are 3 collar pieces you need. And the way those work is there's actually 5 locations you can find them. And the first 3 of those 5 you open will have the color pieces you need. And then the other 2 get filled with bonus collectibles that we don't care about. So we know where those 5 chests are. We're going to open 3 of them that are the least amount out of our way. We already got 1, which was completely on the way in Desert NPC. Worth noting, that chest in particular is missable because once you finish Desert NPC, it's gone. You cannot go back. I mention it because basically the 5 different 2D areas that we go to each have one of those chests. We got one of them. We skipped the one in New Zealand because it was ever so slightly out of the way. We're going to skip the one in the next one too, and get the last 2. Now to open up this next 2D area, I have to talk to this gum golem, and then I have to talk to the gum golem's boyfriend, the skeleton in the cactus patch over here. Yeah, this game's a little bit weird. Part of why I love it. I'm going to aim the camera so I can immediately head this way, because before I go into the next 2D section, there's also a chest right here. Then we drive off the cliff, drop out of car form, and talk to them, and then we can actually enter their house. For fans of the rhythm minigame, enjoy it while it lasts. This is the last one you will see. It's also a bit unique in that there are only gray crystals and green crystals. So it's just, do you press down or not? So, the gameplay gimmick here is very interesting. There are wads of gum on the ground that you can push around and push and pull around and position them. And then there are rib cages that you can inhale in your vacuum cleaner, and then if you shoot them at the wad of gum, it forms a bridge. And so you have to use that to get around. So you can see I did some positioning there. In terms of positioning, generally speaking, using the vacuum cleaner to pull is fastest. Pushing is slightly slower, but frequently what you have to do. And trying to push something while you have something in your tank is miserable and absolutely slow and should be avoided at all costs. This is also a section where we're going to be collecting some keys. But the keys are actually sentient. And are representative of the skeleton and the gum golem that we made friends with outside. But that also means that they are going to pause at various points in this level, and you have to go out of your way to talk to them. Now, conveniently, this one is along the way to a secret bonus path that has a card at the end of it, so we have to go this way anyways. Get a preview of some of the later screens in this section. There we go. All in all, like, doing this fast requires some very precise movement. This might be the most precise, difficult to speedrun 2D section in this game. At least in my opinion. But yeah. That said, I don't have a whole lot more to say about this section. until we get to the end. One nice thing is the keys automatically turn in themselves. We do care about dust a little bit right now, so I am collecting that dust. There, we have to position this in a very specific spot. Here, the positioning matters less, so we just go and shoot it where it already is. Up to make sure you can actually reach the gum there, and there we go. Alright. And now, for the most difficult boss section of the game. You can probably tell the sarcasm in my voice. I'm going to set down the controller here and take a quick break. This is like 45 seconds of auto-scroller, essentially. But yeah, if you go position yourself next to this door, you will take 3 damage during this entire sequence, but otherwise be completely fine. There's 2, there's 3, and we're done. So yeah, as long as you go in with at least 4 health, guaranteed to be done. Now that chest in the back left, that has one of the collar pieces I mentioned. And you might think, hey, that doesn't seem very far out of the way. You'd be correct, but the other 2 that we are picking up are even less out of the way, so still worth it to ignore that one. Alright, nope, I'm going this way. So next up is Orb, Sector 4-16-5, which is at the top of this big ramp here. I opened a gate earlier, and I didn't even remark on it at the time. That's because it is a shortcut out of this section. It's basically opening the back door to this section, but you have to open it from both sides, so we only get to use it going out. In any case, this is a peaceful place. There are no enemies. There's just this apartment building. These sets of this 5-story apartment building. And there's a fashion shop here. And we have to help out this fashion designer by going around, talking to the residents, and getting fashion orders from them. And then designing outfits for the residents of these towers. There, by the way, is our collar piece. We have to top that door at the end anyways, because that door is the fashion order we need to take on this floor. There's 1 per floor. And that said, we took their order, we got their preferences, and they don't matter one lick. It does not matter what outfit you put on here. There is no wrong answer. So I always go with that particular outfit because it's fastest. Just easiest to grab those particular ingredients here. We just need to talk to you, that person, and we can head back down to the 2nd floor. And the thing is, we have to do each of these because you can't actually get anywhere on the higher floors until you've finished the lower floors. So I can't do anything on floor 5 yet. Now I've unlocked floor 5 because I finished that fashion order. So all the way back up. And then on floor 5, we need this person's fashion order, but we also need to go all the way over here, because there's a card at the end. Here's our last fashion order. Everyone likes his outfit. It's the hottest rage. The hottest trend right now is baseball cap, baggy pants, heart t-shirt. And that opens this gate at the very beginning, which lets us go in here. And we were told there was a dust crystal in here, but there's actually only a card. Thankfully, the card is what we want, so no problems there. And then, yeah, like I said, we get to use that shortcut we opened up earlier and head on over here. And just like that, we are out of there. We got one last 2D section to do, but before we do that, we're going to pick up that collar base I mentioned. We've got one last pause glide here, so photosensitivity warning. I have no idea what happened there. That's unusual. I got a bad lift off of this rock. I'm supposed to do this. Yeah, I honestly, no idea what happened there. Not to sound like a meme or anything, but that's never happened before. Anyways, we're heading over here to Pastel Horizon. And yeah. This weird structure is the entry point to our last 2D section. Our last, like, not our last, our second to last 2D section. Now, of course, we're going to end up back in this Nexus, and you might be like, weren't we already here? And the answer is yes. But this portal wasn't open until we entered through that weird flower thing. This is Pastel Horizon. It's one of my favorite 2D sections in the game. It's one of the reasons I even routed all cards in the first place, is because it seemed like a shame to skip this area entirely. Which, you do skip this area entirely in any percent. We're following those rose petals for a little while, but if you try to go any further south than that, you will get stopped by ghosts. So to combat that, we have to go turn on this anti-ghost machine. So that's exactly what we're doing. At which point we'll go back to following those rose petals on the, or cherry blossom petals, I think they actually are, on the water. I don't know, they look like rose petals to me more than cherry blossoms. But that's more a matter of opinion. Anyways, down this way. And if you follow the path all the way here, this fish is here. And you can spark this fish and actually get into the door behind it. We do care a little bit about our dust right now. We are trying to get to 60 dust by the end of this section. That said, we got enough extra. It feels like we shouldn't have a problem hitting it. And there is a room you can grind in if you absolutely need to. But I don't think we'll even need to do that. But I'll still point it out when it comes up. Anyways, that got us a card. Now we need to take the raft again. Head over this way until we see that flying enemy. Head down here. And head into town here. We need to talk to a specific NPC here. Who's concerned about another character that left the village some time ago and gives us a memento of that character's. That we are going to need to turn in to get them out of our way, essentially. Now I'm just doing some diagonal movement on the rafts, because if you do diagonal movement, you just barely scrape by that coast, and then can turn down here, which is where we need to go next. And we can enter this monkey. We'll take that. There we go. We've got enough dust. This is the room where you would grind, because you can actually do it fairly easily. But we don't even need to. We have more than enough already. And there we go. That's where we turned in that sentimental item to that NPC, which unblocks the path and allows us to get the other card. And once you've gotten both of the cards in this section, basically done everything you can do here, there is a trolley you can take, and you can always take it from one side of the map to the other side of the map. But if you've gotten both the cards, it'll make a stop along the way, which unlocks another card. And also the collar piece we need. There's the collar piece. There's our last card. We are basically done. With Pastel Horizon, at least. And then, conveniently, we walk over here, and we're back at the start. We don't need what's in that chest, so we're just going to ignore it and leave. And over here. So, now we've got to actually go use the collar that we've spent so much time trying to assemble. What we need to do is we need to go back to Dustbound Village. And the thing is, in the time since we've been there, the dog that contains Dustbound Village has been domesticated. Is no longer a wild dog and is now a very fancy poodle. Which means in order to actually spark a connection, we need the collar to represent that bond. Just go with me on this. So that's why we need the collar, and that's also why we're heading back to this tower, and we're falling up the tower again. We're gonna pop out here. We're gonna do another pause float. 3, 4, 5. And pet the dog. And it's a dog so nice, you pet it twice. And now you can actually re-enter the dog. And this is where our character actually gets the idea of how to access the good ending. Basically where you realize, hey, you come back to Dustbound Village, everything's different. It's all been cleaned up and put back together. But also, no one has any memory whatsoever of who you are, except for these two characters. Because they weren't here when the great cleaning happened. And this is where you start to get the idea that, hey, the people that you've been working for the entire time, the elements of nurturing you got at the beginning of the game, this seed that's been planted in your head for the entire game, maybe all that's bad. And maybe we should be the ones to do something about it. And so that's exactly what we're going to go do, is we're going to try to break the cycle and do something about it. So, to do that, we need to head back to the center. So I'm just going to fall down this tower this time. It's the same tower you're used to, but right side up instead of upside down. The floating jellyfish mushroom things still bounce you back up, so you still need to avoid them. And you can get through that doorway before you even hit the ground if you just start mashing the interact button as you get near it. We've just got a quick drive to the center. Up this cliff and off of it to get onto the highway quickly and easily. Back through this path that we've tread so many times at this point, and to the center where we can turn in our dust. Right here. What we're looking for is make sure we have more than 150, or 150 or more. Yep, we're good. And then we're just going to step right over here. All those dialogue boxes are basically, hey, are you sure you want to do this? But are you sure? This is the point of no return. No, really, we mean it. And the reason why we need that 150 dust is to cushion our fall when we do this. Which is dive straight down the prism. Now at this point, our keepers in the center here have basically assumed that we're dead. So this is now our replacement. They've grown a new person to replace us. But unbeknownst to them, we were hiding out, and we're now sparking connection with our replacement and entering them. And now we're going to wreck things. Welcome to Nano Cleaner's Era, the final, the longest, and the most difficult 2D section of the game. It introduces several new gameplay gimmicks, of course. First, you've got these pink spikes. They destroy enemies, they damage you. You've got bubbled enemies like that one was. You have to break the bubble before you can damage the enemy. You've got these boomerang enemies that, well, they work like boomerangs when you shoot them out of your cannon. And then we use all three of those things in various different ways, and combine them at times even. Shoot that down. The bubbled enemies here can also touch buttons, so we gotta shoot them around to maneuver them. Here we're gonna use this bubbled boomerang enemy to actually destroy multiple spikes. If the bubble wasn't on there, it would only destroy one of these, and destroy itself at the same time. So our goal here is to destroy the 3 elements of nurturing. To do that, each one is locked off with a key, so we also need to collect 3 keys. So we've got our first key. Here we have to be careful about our movement, because if the shooter touches the red spikes, or the pink spikes, it will be destroyed, and it's our only way to kill these spiked enemies. There's our second key. Heading back down here. We got another bubbled boomerang here. We gotta also break the bubbles on these enemies. We do it while the boomerang's moving through the air, you know, to save time. You gotta be careful about how you shoot that one, because it's very easy to accidentally clip it on the door and waste your shot. There you have to destroy the 2 spikes and then immediately break the bubble so you can destroy the boomerang enemy to unlock the door. And then here's our first element of nurturing, the element of a bowl of cereal. One element destroyed. We gotta do a little bit of backtracking here. We've got one last gameplay gimmick introduced here, which are blood gates. They are red gates that, to unlock them, you have to take damage. So, of course, they make it difficult to take damage in these rooms. Here, you gotta hit yourself with the boomerang while not destroying it on the spikes. Here, you gotta shoot yourself through the teleporter. And then, hey, the snowmen make a reappearance for some reason. And here's our second element of nurturing, the element of a well-regulated temperature. This one is a bit of a coward, bit of a pushover, only takes 1 hit. The other 2 both take 10. Now, of course, we got to backtrack out of here. We got one more key to pick up before we go back to the very beginning of this section. Come on. Trying to push this bubble around, and it does not want to push. Okay, you get out of my way. And Bubble's behaving weirdly today. There's our last key. I'm gonna stun the shooter so you can safely walk across that bridge. And then head back to the beginning, to the initial fork, because 5 of the 6 things you need are on the left side of the fork for some reason, and only the 6th piece is on this side. But here's the one innocent slime all game that you actually are allowed to destroy for, I don't know, reasons. You gotta bait the snowman into destroying that spike enemy. You've got another bubble boomerang. Here I'm going to intentionally take damage to keep this thing under control so that it doesn't careen into one of those innocent slimes and destroy it by accident. And then here's our third and final element of nurturing, the elements of a bottle of milk. I use my vacuum on them because as soon as you use your vacuum on them once, they stop moving, which lets you just unload into them that much more quickly. And now all we've got is the final boss. Final boss. You see that weird looking face on the right side of the UI? That is the Glandalox seed. And that has been in our head and is very angry at us right now. And has been in our head the entire game. And we can't do anything about ours at this point. It's too late. But here's another one. We're going to destroy this one. So we're going for a 6 cycle. There are 3 phases to this boss. And each phase is broken into an outer part and an inner part. The 6 cycle refers to the number of arm swipes made by the outer part. You want 2 cycles per phase. For the inner part, we've got a moving target at the top, and we've got to shoot the spikes into it from below. Each one of these takes 6 hits. The spikes always come from the same positions at the same time, so knowing where you're going to get your 6 hits is not terribly difficult once you've practiced this. So it gets harder and harder to make that 6 cycle that I mentioned as the phases go on, because there's fire shooters that get added, and also the arm stays extended for a shorter period of time. Phase 2, this target actually starts shooting back at you, but it's not terribly hard to get your 6 hits in and not take any hits yourself. Now we've got 2 fire shooters. Ooh, I got the 6 cycle. That last one is particularly tight. Now I did take a bunch of damage here there, so I'm going to take some of this health. And then here is our final phase of this boss. There's this light up floor that lights up in different halves. You tank 1 hit to get your shots in, and then you don't have to worry about damage for the rest of it. And that's gonna do it for this run. There is a horrible screeching noise incoming, followed by time when the last text box disappears. There's our horrible screeching noise. And time. 137 flat is not bad at all. So yeah, that is Anodyne 2 Return to Dust. All cards, good ending, and like I said, 137 flat. Now, we've got the closing cutscene here and the credits. On this recording, I am going to sit through all of those, because for the purposes of leaderboard verification. The leaderboard moderators ask that you sit through this in your recording, and then at the end, you load back into the save file and go through your collection of cards and confirm that you actually have all of the cards. Obviously, for the purposes of a marathon, you can cut here. Say your outros, have your runner plug whatever needs plugging, thank your co-commentators, and thank the host, and move on with the marathon. If you are watching this for the purposes of a marathon submission, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for your consideration. But yeah, you can stop watching now. I won't be upset. There's not really much anything else going on. I'm just waiting out the credits. I forget. How does this compare to my PB? Okay, right. My PB is 136.20, so that's pretty close, actually. That's pretty close. And that PB was on a run where I was silent. I didn't even have my mic on. I was just focusing. Right? It's hard. If you're watching this for marathon purposes, you probably already know this, but for anyone that's watching this for any other reason, it's hard to do a speedrun while also giving commentary on the speedrun that you're doing at the same time. Even if you know the speedrun really well. Just because the act of, okay, I now have to also explain everything that I'm doing while doing it takes a lot more mental energy than just doing it. But I think it makes for a more entertaining product in the long run, so, I get it. And that's also why you get a commentary couch, if you can. Because having other people talk about what you're doing while you're doing it is a lot easier than talking about it yourself. I don't know, I'm just babbling at this point. I'm so used to talking through the entire part of this that I don't want to leave empty air, which is silly, because even for marathon purposes, you gotta leave empty air sometimes, because you want to give the hosts time to actually, plug whatever's going on. Anyways, let's go through our cards. Let's see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 cards. That is all the cards confirmed. Okay, like I said, my name is Code Gorilla. Thank you for taking the time to consider this. Thank you for watching. Bye.